Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the role of gender advisor in investigative bodies in integrating gender. I've been the gender advisor in several investigative bodies established by this Council and deployed through the partnership between UN Women, Justice Rapid Response, and OHCHR. As gender advisor, part of our role is to conduct and streamline an investigative body's gender analysis, which is a tool to bring to the fore why and how women, men, boys and girls, LGBTQI people and gender non-conforming people are subjected to and impacted by human rights violations. We give visibility to victims of human rights violations who are often invisible for a range of reasons, ranging from deeply rooted discrimination in law and in practice and societal shame associated with sexual and gender-based violence. A gender analysis forces us to look into the root causes of these violations: patriarchy, sexism, toxic masculinity, homophobia, discrimination, marginalization, and exclusion. The increasing attention to the role of gender advisor is an illustration of the commitment of this Council to have a gendered approach and the recognition that without dedicated capacity, it has proven difficult to prioritize a gender analysis. However, challenges remain. First and foremost, the role of gender advisor and SGBV investigator are often combined, and the gender analysis is sometimes put on the back burner. In my experience, the gender analysis cannot be an afterthought, and unless the investigation is from the outset geared towards collecting the necessary information, no gender analysis will be possible. Member States have an essential role to play by specifically including in the mandate of investigative bodies not only a focus on the investigation of SGBV, but also the requirement for a gender analysis. As investigators increasingly engage with victims and survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, we're more focused on having a victim-centered approach. What does it look like? We need first to understand the context that facilitates the violations, as well as the grievances and demands for justice of women, LGBTQI people, and groups facing multiple discrimination. It's imperative to have the resources to consult with women's groups, for example, about the areas to be prioritized, about how to frame an issue or recommendation, the terminology to be used, the pitfalls to be avoided. And we need to acknowledge in our own work their struggle and their activism. Second, we're talking about victims that are invisible or have been invisibilized, so we need to reach these victims and the survivors. For that, we need to cast a wider web to reach the victims and to build trust. Sometimes the establishment of a mechanism comes after several years of inaction, and there is suspicion towards the United Nations. We must be proactive and understand how people communicate in a given country. So, for example, most recently, we created a hotline for people to contact us on Signal. Third, we need to listen to victims and recognize their agencies and ensure that victims and survivors have ownership of the work of an investigative body, as they are the ones who will advocate for the implementation of our recommendation. This is achieved through transparency, conducting trauma-informed interviews, managing expectations, having comprehensive referral pathways, and consultations with victims. Investigative bodies have been promoting the principle of do no harm. We need to aim higher. We need to improve our referral pathways for legal, medical, psychosocial, and material assistance and ensure they are comprehensive. Our referral pathways can be hampered by the perception by humanitarian actors and sometimes other UN agencies that interactions with an investigative body might jeopardize their security and the sustainability of their operations. Given the context on which I've worked, I would like to address a plea for availability of services for survivors of SGBV and easier access to humanitarian visas to access such services. Last, it also entails taking all possible measures to avoid re-traumatization and multiple interviewing. In this regard, we've made some progress. For example, in the last investigative body I've been with, we have received statements collected by NGOs and shared with us with the consent of the victims. And rather than starting from scratch, we conducted targeted and follow-up interviews to clarify information contained in the statements. The best practice is to ask for consent to share and to spell out the options from the outset, including the possibility to share with investigative bodies and courts and be proactive in sharing. One option that we could envisage is to empower the victims and survivors by providing them with a secure way to access the information they've provided us. As the prospect of justice might be elusive and require decades sometimes, the only concrete outcome victims and survivors may experience is the experience of being listened to. We owe it to them to ensure that these experiences are victim-centered. Thank you.